coming up on today's episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour. The 3M privileges: money, media, and mobility. We're going to talk about the third and final of the 3M privileges, mobility. Yes, we are discussing teenagers and cars. We've invited a special guest who has a lot of experience with both. We're going to talk about whether you should give your kids a car, let them borrow the family car, if they should be on your insurance, who should pay the insurance, gas, and pay for repairs. We're going to talk about some of the problems to anticipate with a new teenage driver and things to consider as you walk into the world of teenage drivers, and how the Moneypants philosophy can help you navigate and act as your personal GPS. All this and more, but first, the joke of the day.
A young boy had just gotten his driving permit, and he asked his father, who was a minister, if they could discuss his use of the car. His father said to him, I'll make a deal with you. You bring your grades up, study your Bible a little, and get your hair cut, and then we'll talk about it. A month later, the boy came back and again asked his father if they could discuss his use of the car. His father said, Son, I'm really proud of you. You brought your grades up and you've studied your Bible diligently, but you didn't get your hair cut. The young man waited a moment and replied, Dad, I've been thinking about that. Samson had long hair, Moses had long hair, Noah had long hair, even Jesus had long hair. And his father replied, Yes, son, and they walked everywhere they went. Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Moneypants Superpower Hour. We're your hosts, Hannah and Fontaine Judd, and we're the proud parents of 7 sons and 6 daughters, ranging in age from college student to toddler. We're both BYU graduates and the creators of Moneypants. Head on over to CaptainMoneyPants.com to learn more about what we do and what we're all about. We believe every person on this planet has been given at least one superpower to help them accomplish their unique mission in life. But the only way to unlock those superpowers is through work ethic. That's when greatness happens. And that's where Moneypants comes in. Moneypants is the complete tool set for cultivating work ethic in all aspects of a person's life. And today we're going to be talking about the 3M privileges, the 3 things that kind of need to be a privilege and not so much a right. Those 3 things, they're the 3 things that you should retain as part of your job as a parent, that you should really try to limit your kids' access to, kind of almost like 3 burdens to withhold from your children. And those are money, media, and mobility. And we talked about money at length, and we talked about media, and the media one, we were hardly exhaustive there, but we did talk about it a little bit, some ideas about basically, parents retain the right and the ownership of all the media, as well as all the devices in the home. And then today is going to be part 3. We're going to be focusing on mobility, and that includes, cars and driving and bikes and motorcycles and transportation, because a lot of problems can be avoided if parents retain those things as a privilege rather than giving it to their children as a right. If parents maintain control of those things and own those things rather than handing them over to their kids. And today, though, we have a special guest. It is my father-in-law, who also happens to be a family physician, but he has a unique perspective because he raised 8 sons and 3 daughters. And so he has this, high level of education, but he also has raised a lot of children, and he also has a lot of experience as a doctor. So kind of a unique perspective. Also, he comes from a large family himself. So I'm excited. So without further ado, hello, Dr. Jones. How are you today?
Hey, I'm great. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I listen to it all the time. And you guys have a lot of wisdom, a lot of experience. I really appreciate it. Well,
and that's part of the reason, though, we actually were excited to have you on here, because we've only raised 2 teenagers by the time they've left home. You raised 11. But my focus isn't so much on being a family physician as it is you've raised 8 boys and 3 daughters. That to me is of infinite more value than being a family physician, because you've walked the walk, I guess, as opposed to, and we've talked about this a little bit on the show, is, oh man, all these experts, they've never raised kids, or they're right out of college,
or they have their theories, but they've never actually tried them. Whereas like you,
so you have a very unique perspective. You have a high level of education, and you have all this experience as a doctor, and you've raised all these kids. Anyway, I don't want to.
Well, yeah. And then in his family, you were the fourth boy in a row. Your mom had.
Yes.
Yeah. So she had four teenage boys all at the same time. Like you guys were all pretty much teenagers at the same time, right?
We sure were.
So I'm really excited to kind of hear your pearls of wisdom from you, because this is that area. Hannah and I have our own kind of unique perspective, but we're still kind of in the theory stage. We've only applied this to a few of our children.
And we've already made some mistakes and went,
so,
oh gosh.
And so
that
I thought it'd be really
best.
helpful to get a little more wisdom from you and some of your thoughts. And I know Hannah had a whole bunch of questions for you.
Well, the first thing is, I don't know why I didn't call him in the first place. Like, I don't know why I like.
Well, no, okay.
You would have thought like, oh, well, call your dad and ask him because he's probably already.
Well, no, we
did
when it came to media, and they were in the same boat we were, because the whole iPhone, smartphone, internet thing was new.
Yeah, I called my mom crying.
But this one, cars are not new.
Yeah.
Mobility is not new.
Yeah, that's been around
So
since.
he is. I am hoping
Yeah.
to get a wealth of knowledge from this from our guest.
Yes.
So go ahead, Hannah. What do you have for him?
Moneypants, you want to let your kids, instead of giving them a bunch of things for free, you want to give them the opportunity to earn some of the things they get. Whereas a lot of times there's this attitude of these are their rights. Like,
Well, they deserve
they
that.
deserve
Hannah,
this.
we've heard that.
We've heard this from people where,
actually some of my own family
it's their
members,
right to play soccer and for you to pay for it, and it's their right.
No, and it's my responsibility as a parent to give those things.
Yeah,
to
and
them.
it's your responsibility to buy them a car, and it's your responsibility to give all these things to your kids. So a lot of times when kids turn 16, there's this idea of, I've got to buy my 16-year-old a car, and
somehow they deserve it.
Yeah, and
they've earned it.
How many moms get a job outside of the home just so they can pay car payments on their teenager's car? Like, that's a thing. That's a thing, and and where they get a job outside the home with that main goal in mind of, I'm going to pay for my 16-year-old's car, that I'm going to buy them for their birthday, and I'm going to make the car payments for it. And so it was funny because my teenagers, they go to a very wealthy school, and a lot of their friends were being given cars and given really nice cars.
Yeah, like a Sweet 16 present. Here's your BMW. Sure.
And so
we saw that.
So my oldest daughter came home from school, and some girl she knew that she's talking to had her 16th birthday, and her parents had gotten her some really nice car. I don't know if it was a BMW or what, but my oldest daughter was like, I couldn't believe it. She was at school and she was so mad because they had bought her the car, and it was this really nice car, and it was the wrong color. And she was so ticked off at her parents for getting the wrong color. And so the appreciation there was a little lost on the daughter, where it wasn't even appreciated. It was, oh, you didn't get me exactly what I wanted?
So is she going to have any problem if, getting in an accident or taking care of the car? It's not even really what she wanted. Like, what a horrible mistake.
Yeah,
and
then I remember as a teenager watching this one boy, and I can't remember his name. I think it was Matt. I don't know. But he got, for his 16th birthday, he got this really nice red pickup truck. And he was, showing it off and, taking girls around in it. And he was just wild with this car.
When was this?
When I was in high school.
Oh, okay.
And I switched high schools, but we were still in the same town. And I remember seeing his car a year later. And we were waiting at a stoplight, and his car was thrashed. It was rattling, and the engine was making weird noises. I was like, he thrashed that car in 1 year. This brand new, really nice car. And so it was kind of like maybe it's not a good idea
But that kind of goes back to my point where I think his parents had actually given him a burden, given him a level of responsibility he wasn't prepared for, he couldn't handle, and it actually turned out to be a burden for him.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he got in a lot of trouble with that car. But
And it wasn't fair, but it wasn't fair to him. Like,
from the rumors.
Mom and dad, come on, you can't saddle your kids with that high level of a burden. It's too much. It's just like having unfettered access to media or unfettered access to money. It's a burden that you're putting on your kids.
They don't quite understand the responsibility of it because, well, first off,
but back up.
They don't understand like how expensive these new cars were. Like,
right.
I don't think they,
or how much repairs are, or how difficult it is to take care of, or how much it's like. And it's like a baby.
They didn't
but not
think
quite.
about
But
it.
it's like
they didn't think about it, and they didn't care.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. As far as giving your kids a reward for doing well, you're giving them a car, something really extravagant. We had experience like that, kind of similar, where the kids expect that. I had one son who, because he got straight A's, and all of his friends who got straight A's got cars.
Now, did you set that up with him? Did he know? Like, you're like, hey, if you get straight A's, you'll get a car, or is it just because of his friends?
Just because of his friends. Just because of his friends, they were getting cars because they got straight A's, and so he came to me, saying, where's my car? Shouldn't I get a car? I got straight A's.
No, well, how old was he? Was it this like a high school student? Was this college?
Yeah,
what?
Yeah, this is high school. He was on his way to be the valedictorian, and boy, I'll tell you what, he thought because he got straight A's he needed a car, and when I said, what? No.
Well, I have a question. Did you ever give any of your kids cars, or was that just kind of a blanket? No, we're not doing that. Like, how did you arrive at that conclusion? Like, what made you say, like when you said?
Now, what things did you try?
Yeah, we'll back up. When you told your son, no way. When he came to you and was expecting a car, why were you? Because you said you looked at him cross-eyed. I'm like, no. Why were you already like? When did you make that decision? Like, was it when you and your wife first got married and you decided we're never going to give our children cars? Or was it, you made the mistake with another child and you gave them a car and you're like, oh no, we're not going to give this kid a car. Like, how did you arrive at that?
Were you a teenager before? Yeah. Did you remember it?
Well, no, because you were very adamant. Like, no, we're not giving you a car. So how did you arrive at it? It wasn't like, oh, well, let's talk about it. No, you said that, no, it was a very easy decision. No way. So how did you arrive at that? Like, what was the thought process?
I can tell you that my parents had 10 children, and I was the fourth son, the fourth child and fourth son. And I saw personally how my brothers would treat my parents' cars. My parents would allow my older brothers to drive. And boy, I'll tell you, they really ruined those cars. And when they were driving me around, it's like, man, is this Le Mans or what is this? But by the time I got to the driving age, there's no way. I wasn't driving their car, and if I wanted a car, I had to buy it, and so I did. And I bought a car for $100, which probably today is about $500, but it was $100, and the engine was all taken apart in 2 cardboard boxes in the back seat. And the guy who sold it to me couldn't put it back together. So I got a shop manual and I pieced this thing back together and had a car. But I'll tell you what, I treated it nice, because I knew that you treat this car bad and it's gonna break down. I'm gonna end up back in the garage with it, trying to put it back together, and it's gonna cost me a fortune.
So who was the one paying for the parts and the tools and things to fix the car?
Well, we have the tools. My family's a mechanic. My dad's a mechanical engineer. My grandfather, who had passed away, was an inventor, and he was a mechanical engineer as well. And they had a lot of tools, and we would always fix our own stuff. We played with mini bikes and go-karts and things like that. So we had the tools. Any parts I needed, I paid for it.
Oh, okay.
I worked for it.
Okay.
I worked for my dad, and he would pay me an hourly wage, and I would earn the money.
So your parents, after 4 boys in a row, by the time they got to the 4th boy, they wisened up on the whole
giving kids cars,
letting their kids use their cars, or giving them
Yeah,
cars.
they never gave them cars. They just would allow them to use their car.
Oh, okay, sure.
And they just treated the cars awful, just awful. And so by the time I was there, I never got to drive my parents' car unless my parent was in the car with me, and I was driving. That was okay. But to just, take off in the car, go on a date or whatever, no way.
Well,
Absolutely no way.
I only had one older brother, and I remember mom let this older brother use the car, and I was in the car, and there was this one street that had two railroad crossings, and they were they was up on a kind of a sharp little hill, and I don't know if you'd say the hill was 6 feet tall, but it was kind of a rapid.
The tracks were raised right there. At
yeah,
the road.
It was like rapid incline and rapid down. And so when cars would go over it, they'd have to slow way down, go up and over this hump, and then, the next one up and over. Anyway, my brother was driving my mom's van, and he had a friend in the front seat with him, and I was in the back, and he, instead of slowing down, he floored it. And went as fast as he could over this huge hump thing. And the car actually, it caught air. It was in the air and came crashing down. And then he did it again for the second hump. And I was like, you are in huge trouble. And, he and his friend were just dying laughing. They're like, let's do it again. That was awesome. But after that, I informed my papa. And after that, it was, if you want to drive a car, you're going to have to get your own. So that was, but even after that, though, there were some problems where, he would take off sometimes and, go really far away or something without permission. Like one time I remember him calling my dad in the late at night or like 3 a.m. saying, hey, so just so you know, so you're not worried, I drove down to such and such beach and I'm here. And but because it was his own car at that point, then he kind of felt like he would forget to inform his parents that he was going somewhere. And so that was kind of one of it was good that he had his own car and he wasn't doing that to my mom's car anymore. But then at the same time, he would do wild stuff, where, you're still under 18,
Well, was he still on your parents' insurance?
I don't know. So a while ago, I had called you for advice, Dad, and you had said something to the effect of, hey, make sure, don't put your kids on your insurance. What is this whole thing about, well, make sure your kids aren't on your insurance?
Well, insurance, you can add your kids to your insurance policy. The problem is that if they get in a wreck or if they get some moving violations, it's going to raise your insurance rates. And it'll raise your rate, assuming they don't do it again, it'll raise your rates for 5 years. And so the kid could be off at college or off married, and you're still paying these high insurance rates because they got, speeding tickets or whatever. So
you're kind of left holding the bag.
Right. And it's so much better if you just say, hey, before you buy a car, maybe you ought to look at what the insurance is going to cost you and the registration and the upkeep on the car to make sure you can afford it. And so when they go and they find that the insurance is going to cost them, $1,000 a month, it pretty much tells them that, gee, maybe I better wait. Maybe I better wait until I can afford a car, because you try to put them on your insurance, and it is really gets very expensive.
Well, that's I think a great wake up call of $1,000. I don't know about $1,000 a month, but yeah, it's like, wow, okay, never mind. I thought I wanted a car, but no.
Yeah. So did you have any experiences with that? Like, did you ever make that mistake, or like how did you arrive at that conclusion?
Well, no, because some parents may listen to this and go, "Oh, you're horrible. Of course, I'm going to put my kid on my insurance because it's going to cost them way more if they're on their own, and you're not fulfilling your duties as a parent." But how would you respond to that one?
Well, it's just it's kind of a life experience, just to let them know that if you're going to drive a car, it's an expensive proposition. It's just like if you go out and buy your own car and you're paying thousands of dollars for a vehicle, you're going to treat it with a little bit more tender care and respect than if someone just plops it in your lap, like that you were talking about, that guy with the red truck. Just destroys it in a year. Boy, I'll tell you, when I bought my own car and pieced that engine together, I treated that thing with kid gloves. I was very careful with it. I drove it very, very well, and it lasted, and I was able to sell it for 4 times what I bought it for after I'd used it for 2 years.
Wow.
So you're saying that you weren't out drag racing with it and flying over the railroad track humps, is what you're saying.
Right. That's right.
Because you knew, though, because you bought the car. First of all, you earned the money to buy the car, right, and then you were the one that repaired the car, and you knew how much time and energy and effort and skill it took to repair the car. And so because of that, you treated the car much differently than your brothers, who were just given access to cars.
So, but like your parents, they had let your older brothers use their cars, but you said by the time they got to you, they had changed their mind on that. But you were only their 4th child, so had they changed their mind on the insurance thing, or was that still up in the air for them?
My dad put me on his insurance, and then after I got married and I was off of his insurance, he told me, "Don't ever put your kids on your insurance."
What?
And what made him say that?
Yeah. Did you have?
Well, he finally got the experience that
Did you give him that experience, Dad?
Well, I got a few moving violations. But it wasn't in my car. It was on a motorcycle, and that's where I did some crazy stuff on a motorcycle. But I got some speeding tickets on a motorcycle.
Wow.
And when you do that, then your rates go way up.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about letting kids either, as you said, buy a car, or in our case, letting our kids earn a car. And I want to talk about some of the problems, I guess, of letting kids have basically unfettered access to cars. And I'll ask you this first before we get into that. Troy, did you, when you had your car, could you get in it and drive anywhere at any time and do whatever you wanted with it? Was that something your parents let you do? Was it kind of it's his car, he can do whatever he wants with it? Or did you have any restrictions? Just out of curiosity.
I had no restrictions. But I was pretty responsible type person.
Okay, well then, what about did any of your other brothers or siblings have cars of their own? And if so, did they ever have any restrictions?
Or what about your own kids? Like,
sure.
Yeah, for example, because
what you bring up is a really good point, Troy, is that some kids will be perfectly fine. And if you happen to have those kids, boy, count your lucky stars, because not all kids are like that. And I guess that's kind of what we wanted to talk about was, what to do, how to avoid the potential problems of the kids who aren't future Troy Jones types, where let me ask, did you mentioned that you're older brothers, but how they kind of set the stage for you to not have access to the family car. But I'm just curious, did any of your younger siblings or your own children cause you to rethink letting your kids have access to vehicles? And if so, why?
Well, my children didn't have a lot of access to the vehicles. I think, and you might remember better, Hannah, than I do on this. But I think we had rules like, if you're going to go out at night, you got to be home before midnight.
Yes, actually, that was a very strict rule. But I don't know what the consequence was, but I only did it once or twice.
Yes, I think it's really important to write down what the rule is and then what the consequence for violation of that rule is. And so all the kids know. And that's what we did with our family is that we had to write down all of the rules, and some of the kids didn't need some of the rules, but some of them needed some rules, especially our last few. We had to write down all the rules and the punishment for violation of those rules. I made a copy of them, gave each one a copy, and kept a copy on the computer. And so when a violation occurred, well, this is the consequence. It's like, sorry, man. I mean, you violated the rule.
Right. You chose this. You chose this course of action, and because of that, you also chose this consequence. Here it is. I mean, you agreed to this when we set it all up. I love how you say that, though. Like you sat them all down. They all knew what the rules were, but also what the consequences were. And so if they chose to break the rule, they knew these were the consequences they were choosing. And it was very clear. And I like that a lot.
It reminds me of, like, if let's say you're listening to this podcast and you're like, well, I don't really agree with their rules or their specific rules that they have. This is still useful because you want to have rules and boundaries set up ahead of time. I had a son who we got a call in the middle of the night from a police officer saying, "Are you so-and-so's parents?" And we're like, "Yeah." And it turned out my son, he had a curfew of midnight and he hadn't left this girl's house that he liked in time. And so he was making up for it by speeding through, not stopping at any stop signs.
In our neighborhood, there's a intersection where it's got like two stop signs right in a row, like within about, 10 meters of each other. And he just blew right through them. But not only did he blow right through them, he was going like 75 miles an hour in a residential, what is it?
And his sister his younger sister was in the car sleeping. And so, it just a double whammy. And he's driving this cool looking sports car.
Yeah,
and
it's a little two-seater.
So we went out there and went to the scene of the crime and met the officers. And what was really bad is the car wasn't registered. And so they could have impounded the car. Anyway, the officers, instead of giving him a ticket, which it's probably good that they didn't because he was on our insurance. What Dad was saying was a mistake. And also the car was registered in our names. Mm-hmm. Still, it hadn't transferred over. It wasn't registered to him. So it was going to be us with the car impounded, right, and us paying the insurance. Yep. And so at the same time, I wanted him to understand the consequences of, hey, you speed and there are consequences. But that didn't happen. Instead, the officer said, well, I can tell you guys are good parents, but I'm going to let him off. But you need to implement some consequence for this behavior. And I'm going to hand that over to you to decide, but you need to do something. And so we're like, okay. And we're like, wow, he got off really easy. He was going to have to pay a huge ticket, go to driving school, have the car impounded. It was going to be a big deal. And he got off the hook. And we decided, okay, you're not going to be able to drive the car for, the next, I don't know if it was 2 weeks or a month. And
it was 2 weeks, if I remember right.
Yeah. And the next thing I knew, I had another adult pull me aside and say, hey, I understand you're being really mean to your son and you've taken away his car
that
and
he had earned for
and
earning
you
his
don't
eagle.
trust him and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, instead of him going, gosh, I broke the rule and here are the consequences I have to pay, instead it turned to being mad at me and mad at his dad. And part of it was I didn't anticipate that a teenage boy would speed. I didn't ever go, hey, this could happen and probably will. And so I didn't think to go, hey, let's talk about this ahead of time. What's going to happen if you're not obeying the driving laws, or you get a ticket.
That was the problem, is he had been so responsible to get the car in the first
Yeah,
place.
he was so incredibly responsible
we
getting
just
the car.
figured that it would-
We're just like, he's responsible.
We figured it would carry through with the vehicle, and it didn't
But
at all.
but
because,
this poor
because we
young
didn't-
man.
He didn't set, well, first of all, it was too much responsibility.
Well, and it was just the nicest looking race
That's
car.
what I'm saying. It was too much responsibility. You don't give, well, a good example is you don't give a 4-year-old a switchblade knife set. That's not something you do. You don't give a 6-year-old, hey, here's your own shotgun.
Go for it.
Yeah, it's too much responsibility. And then you can't get mad at him when he accidentally shoots out the window, because it's like, well, you gave a 6-year-old a shotgun. What were you expecting to happen? Like, and we've talked about this before, where, here are teenagers, and a lot of times
They want their independence.
they look like adults, but they're not. Their brains haven't finished developing. And it's deceptive, because you look at him, you're like, oh, well, he looks like a responsible adult. He's fully grown. He's shaving every other day, and he's tall, and he earned this, and he's shown to be responsible in these areas. And yeah, he looks like a responsible adult. Yes, you can have that car. Wrong.
Yeah, these boys, they have such high levels of testosterone, and they just don't know what to do with it. So they hit the gas pedal.
Oh.
You don't see that with the girls. The girls don't do that.
And the insurance companies know it.
Yes.
They do. Absolutely.
This isn't us just saying this. The insurance companies, they're like, no, this is fact, guys.
Yes.
And we're going to reflect it in the price.
Now, there are always exceptions, but by and large, yes, those standards hold true.
Yeah,
Boys,
if they have a hormone imbalance.
yeah.
So you should, the point is, you should expect these things. I don't know well, we just told you why we didn't, because we're like, our son is so responsible, and he was calmer, like, than some of our other boys. I'm
No.
I totally expect that behavior. But for him, I was like, oh, he's so mild-mannered. And he was. I only have one other kid that's that mild-mannered.
The weird thing is, we had to eventually not only curtail him driving his own car, but also any of the cars, because of that, well, the testosterone coursing through his veins, where he couldn't help it. We have a V8 SUV. It's just full of power, all the 200 and something horse underneath the hood, and he 280 something horse underneath the hood, and you press on the gas and that thing goes. And I caught him one time racing that car, and I was like, excuse me, do you know how much it would cost to fix this car? This is an $80,000 car you're racing around like it's a go-kart. It's not designed to do the things that you're doing with it, and it's not designed to, and I don't want to be paying the wear and tear and the brakes, blah, blah. Anyway, but the interesting thing is, because we didn't set that up with him ahead of time, he felt like, and this was our mistake, is he felt like that we didn't like him, we didn't love him anymore, and that we were angry at him because we were retroactively limiting his access to his own car.
Yeah, hand us your keys. Sorry.
Yeah.
This is no.
And he's like, how dare you? How
this
could
is
you?
my car. And
well, the analogy I used was, you know what? That may be true. I'll give you an example. Here was a guy, worked really hard, made millions of dollars, bought himself a really nice house and a boat and super nice cars and nice jewelry and all that. And then he went and robbed a bank. And the police come and they take all the jewelry and the cars and the house, and it all goes away because he broke the law. And the guy's
but
like,
the law was set up ahead of time.
But the guy's like, hey, you can't take those away. I earned those myself. And it's like, yes, you did. But you didn't follow all the rules. You have to in order to enjoy all the privileges, you have to follow all the rules. And the guy didn't understand that. And I think that was part of the problem with teenagers, is they don't get it.
Well, and back to the point, we didn't have it set up ahead of time.
And that was our mistake.
And so instead of him going, why did I do that?
Well, but our idea is, and this is what we suggest, and we just as a blanket rule, the cars remain in the possession of the parents, and using them is a privilege based off of proper behaviors.
Yeah, but even that, though...
They can be, well, that's the nice thing about a privilege. A privilege can be revoked at any time. Whereas the ownership of the vehicle, And that was the problem we ran into with our son is like, well, he did. He earned it. He worked really hard. He earned that car. It was his. We promised it to him. We did give it to him. And then all of a sudden we're limiting access to it. And it just created this very unfortunate relationship where he felt we no longer cared about him. And it did. It damaged
He got
the
really
relationship.
angry. He was really angry.
And offended, yeah.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. We made a mistake. What we should have done was said, hey, if you get your Eagle by the time you're 16, this is what we say. We're going to let you use that car. That will be yours to use. And when you leave home, we're going to sign over the pink slip. So that'll be yours to take wherever you want. How's that for a good deal? And then,
that would have been better than what we did. But at the same time, Dad, like you,
Dr. Jones,
what was your experience like of going, hey, letting your kids use the car, like maybe to go pick something up at the grocery store, or okay, yeah, I'd have to drive you otherwise. Yeah, go ahead and use my car. Like, are there any drawbacks to that?
Oh, yeah. They use your car. You don't know what they're doing with it. And, in fact, we put a tracker in one of our cars, and, the kid was going to go to a church night at the church, and he wanted to use the car, so he used the car, and we're watching him on this tracker. We're on the computer watching where the car is going. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what, he never got even near the church. He went to this house and this house and this house. And when he came back, he had used about 6 gallons of gas. And asked him where he'd been. Well, I went to church.
Did he know you had a tracker?
No, he didn't know at that time.
Does he know now?
Oh, he knows now.
Oh, dear. Okay. I didn't want to blow your cover. So having a tracker, you kind of confirm, like, So would it have worked to say, hey, I heard that you didn't actually go
how did you deal with this?
Yeah, how did you deal with that without letting him know you had a tracker?
I don't even remember. I wish I could. Those were tumultuous days.
Now, after this experience, though,
I do not advise a tracker, because, boy, I'll tell you what, it makes you fume to see what they're doing with your car.
Wait, what all did this tracker track?
Just where they went.
It shows you how fast the car's going.
Oh, no.
It's accelerating or decelerating, and it shows you exactly where it's going on the roads.
Oh, my goodness.
And so you see they're really hitting the gas, and the wheels are spinning. It even told you if the wheels were spinning, and we were getting that. So,
wow,
not a good thing. Don't get the tracker. Don't get the tracker. Just don't let them use your car.
Your blood pressure's like bubbling over every time.
I mean, my policy was, you want to drive, you want a car, you go get yourself a car, and you pay for your insurance. And basically what that does is that just tells the kid, well, maybe I better wait until I'm done with college and I got a job and I can afford it. It does limit their mobility, but they can always get a ride with their friends, which that's going to happen. Like it or not, it's going to happen. They're going to go with their friends.
It limits their mobility. Is that a bad thing?
In some cases, it's a very good thing.
Yeah.
But kids are pretty active. They do a lot of stuff. And they're involved in a lot of good things. And you want them to be able to be in the good stuff. Be involved in the good things. And sometimes that can limit that somewhat. They don't have their own vehicle.
What about because one of the issues when kids turn 16 is they want to get a job, and in order to get a job, a lot of times they have to be able to tell their employer, I have a job, I have a car, I have transportation. Mm-hmm. How would you handle that? Because you want them to get a job and you want them to be responsible and have that experience. But that's kind of the hang up of, well, that's why I'm getting them a car at 16 is because so they can develop. develop responsibility and get a job. So
say, hey, ride a bicycle to work. And if the employer requires that you have a car, then go get a job somewhere else. But if you get a job and you earn enough money for purchasing a car and insurance and all that, well, fine.
Well, if you're able to do that, though, if you have a job where you're able to earn enough money to buy a car and pay for the insurance and pay for the upkeep, I guess technically you would be responsible enough to have a car.
Yeah, and you're going to treat it a lot differently.
Because that was your experience.
Yeah, and to see your insurance rates go up like crazy, just because you got a few traffic violations, hey, it's a wake-up call. Because they're the one paying the bill.
It's a self-teaching process.
And they're not mad at you. It doesn't hurt your relationship with them.
Yeah, things got a lot different, Hannah,
What,
from when you were a kid and our later children. Things got a lot different. I mean, we learned a lot.
I know.
Well, how so? Like,
I know he made the mistake of letting me use a car. And I wasn't driving it crazy, but I actually destroyed the car.
Was that the one with the oil?
There was a problem with the oil. The oil was leaking, and there was some repair that needed to be done. And we weren't at a point where we could take care of it. And so my dad said, hey, look, if the car gets low on oil, it's going to destroy the engine. It's like, you got to check this every week, make sure there's enough oil in there. And I was super busy. Like, I kind of overdid it with my schedule. But I was like, okay, I don't want to destroy the engine. But instead of following the directions all the way and checking the oil, it got to the point where I'm like, I'm just in a hurry, but it needs oil all the time. And I dump a thing of oil into it and then go. And I did that for a couple weeks in a row, and not checking the oil, but just adding oil. And the car started having problems. I went to my dad. I'm like, hey, the car's like doing this and making these noises. I forget what it was doing. You probably know what it was doing. But Dad. and Dad.
Death rattle.
Yeah, the death rattle. What happened from me adding oil and not checking?
It just destroyed the car.
It destroyed the car. And apparently you can't add too much oil to a car. It's problematic. And so this nice car.
No, you can add too much oil to a car.
You can add too much oil.
Turns out you can.
Yeah. But the thing is I kind of had my parents in a tough spot because I attended early morning seminary and I had to leave the house at 5:45. And my dad and mom, they had limited sleep as well. And it wasn't their desire to wake up at 5:45 to drive me to seminary. And I would drive myself and my younger siblings to seminary. And so I remember after I destroyed the car, I said, I'm sorry, Dad, and I actually don't even want a car. It's too much responsibility. Mm-hmm. I actually don't want a car. I'm okay with not having a car and not having a car to use. That's fine. And my dad just kind of turned red in the face, and I realized later it's because he didn't want to have to drive to wake up earlier to have to drive all the way to seminary. But that's I think a lot of people get their kids cars because they don't want to have to drive them everywhere. They don't want to be the taxi cab driver. They don't want to have to drive them to work. They don't want to have to drive them places. So what's been your experience with that? What solution did you come up with there? Because I wasn't there while you were raising the rest of these kids as teenagers. I wasn't. And that's part of the reason I was, as a parent, I've had an easier time dealing with younger children, but a harder time dealing with teenagers because I feel like I've had years and years and years of experience of seeing younger kids, but not as much experience seeing like teenagers and older kids. And so it was more of a shock to me when I had teenagers of my own.
Well, it doesn't help that one of our teenagers was the most difficult teenager on the face of the planet. Where this particular teenager really did kind of it was their job to find, they were the raptor in Jurassic Park, testing the fence for weaknesses on every single family rule. So I do have to give us a little bit of slack.
Yeah, it's true. Most people don't have that experience.
No.
But I'm sure there are people who do, though.
What if that's your only child?
Oh my goodness.
You'd be like,
see,
well,
that's why you should have 10 children or so, because otherwise you'll feel like a
colossal
failure.
failure.
Oh dear. Okay, yeah, I can't imagine.
When you have kids that are involved in a lot of things and you've got a lot of kids, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be a taxi cab driver. So if your children are involved in extracurricular activities and they really want to be involved in them, they will find a way to get there. If they have to call a friend or if they have to ride their bike, they'll find a way to get there. And so we just didn't do a lot of the taxi stuff. Well, we did with our first several children. But after that, it was just too much of a burden. And sure enough, they would find a way to get to where they wanted to go. If they really wanted to do it. If they wanted to wrestle, great. If they wanted to play soccer, great. They could find their way there.
Wow. I think I'm at that point, Dad. Because, we're having this COVID lockdown. I mean, and it's a part, I'm not sick. Nobody in my family has passed away and we haven't lost our job. So that's, I'm not happy about that so many people are suffering around me. But aside from that, the thing I have enjoyed is the fact that things have just slowed down at home and I'm not driving all over the place and being pulled in all these different directions.
Well, that was a realization we made, Hannah, is how many hours per day we were just driving.
Oh, yeah. Like one time I realized that I was driving 4 hours every day, like multiple days in a row, 4 hours. And it was really stressful because it was also on a clock. I got to be here. I got to be here. I got to be here. And it was actually really stressful, not only for me, but for the kids as well. So yeah, so you found that, in a big family situation or maybe a situation where it's a single parent and they can't be there all the time, just say to your kids, if you want to do this, you're going to have to figure it out.
They do. It's not a tough deal.
But back to the topic though of kids, giving a kid a car because you want them to get a job. You want them to be able to get a job. Have you ever made that mistake?
I think, I did. Well, I had one son who, he could probably use a car to get a job. He's going to be getting married pretty soon anyway. He's like 21, going on 22 years old. So I said, here, I had a 1985 Jeep CJ7. It was in really good shape. So I said, I'm going to give you this car as your wedding gift. He wasn't engaged, but it was going to be his wedding gift. And I thought he could use it now. So he takes this car, and I'll never forget, we live about 3.5 miles outside of town, and there's a long straightaway, and I'm driving into town, and he happens to be coming the other way. And I'll tell you what, he must have been going 100 miles an hour in that car, in that Jeep. And he would never check the oil. And one day he came in. He said, "Oh yeah, he was down 3.5 quarts." And it was soon after. Soon after that, the engine was toast. And he ended up selling it for $300. And when I gave it to him, it was probably a $10,000 car.
Oh God.
Oh, how much time? Like how much time was it between the time you gave him the car and the time he sold it?
Probably not more than 6 months.
Oh.
Good grief.
Okay, so, that's like the kid that I noticed in where the parents had given him the car.
And that's it for today. There you go. That's it. I think we've proven our point. Don't give your kids cars. Holy smokes.
Oh, that money can probably go to something better.
Wow, 6 months.
These Jeeps are collector's items. The 85 CJ7. If it's in really good shape and you've got some nice tires on it, I'll go for $15,000. This was just standard. This was a standard stock CJ7, and it was probably worth $10,000.
but
I'll say that much for
but because even though he was older, because he hadn't like earned it himself or worked for it in any sort of way, he didn't comprehend the value. And so it's not really his fault.
Well, I think it's twofold. It's one.
It's my fault.
It's
my fault.
Yeah. Ultimately, because it's.
But I think it's twofold. One, if they haven't earned it, and we've talked about this ad nauseum, where if a kid hasn't earned it, they don't appreciate it. They just can't. But secondly, when it comes to things like cars or media or these things, some of them, even if they did earn it, it's too much for them to understand. It's actually too much of a responsibility. Where, oh yeah, you did. Way to go. You saved up $10,000. You bought yourself a car, but you're 16 or whatever. You still don't actually know enough about how to handle that. Like, I guess that's why we recommend against, giving or even letting kids buy their own cars for the most part. But like the same thing, like, oh, my son, he saved up $350 and bought himself a 9mm pistol. No, I'm not going to allow that in my home because he doesn't know the responsibility of using that weapon properly is too great for him to handle at that point. He needs to get special training and develop more sense and develop his brain a little bit more before he can actually accurately use that in a setting. So
I think you like give your kids a car because you love them. You're like, this is a great opportunity, and you're excited. You're like, hey guys, a car,
Right.
But the thing is they're not capable of like appreciating it or being to the right degree. One idea I once read about I don't know if it was in the paper or what, that I thought was really cool was this dad, instead of, buying his daughter a brand new car and making payments on it, got her an old junker that didn't even work, but it was a cool car, but it was an older car and it needed all this work. And he said to her, hey, we got you this car for your birthday, but it doesn't work. But we're willing to buy the pieces of the car.
It was like a 65 Ford Mustang.
Yeah, it was something old, cool, but not working and not in good shape. And we'll buy the pieces, but you have to be the one to figure out where fix it and figure out where it goes and get yourself a manual. And they said it's a great experience because, year or so later, she knew everything about that car. She had put it together and it became a hobby of hers where, she was very proud of it and it was a good experience. So we thought we would do something similar when our son earned his car. We said, hey, it's not working right now, but we'll pay for the parts, but you have to do the fixing. And so...
we won't pay for labor.
Yeah. So we tried the same thing and it didn't work out well. What ended up happening was he'd break the car or let somebody use it or touch it, break the car, and then we'd have to keep buying parts. Or the other thing was he was a perfectionist and he basically wanted to replace the whole engine of the car. And it was going, I'm like, I don't think the car's ever run this well. Yeah. Yes, it's fixed. No, we're not going to keep buying parts. But
it started out, hey, I need to replace the battery. Oh, I need to replace the battery cables. Oh, I need to replace the connections. Oh, I need to replace the spark plugs. I need to replace the spark plug cables. Oh, you know what? The valve cover needs to be redone. Oh, look at the timing chain is off. And it's just like, whoa. It just kind of exploded where pretty soon it was like, yeah, we just need a whole new engine.
Yeah.
Like, it just...
Okay, so that was a mistake. First off, we kept him on our insurance and we had the car registered to us and we were paying for the registration. But the repair thing, what were we thinking? Like, we had totally forgotten Moneypants and the whole Moneypants philosophy because why did we tell him we were going to pay for the parts? We never should have said that. He should have been earning the money to pay for the parts, and then he would have been a little more motivated to take care of the car. We were basically paying for all these things where that could have been an opportunity for him to go, hey, I need to earn money for this and have something for him to be working towards, which is what you want. You want And with the insurance, we kind of remembered the concept of, because we said, hey, it was gas. Gas is where we helped him out, not in a correct way. We said, hey, for every A you get in school, so we'll check your grades every month, and every A that you have in a class, we'll put this much money towards your gas money. And so that actually helped him through some time. So he was really motivated to work on his grades and be mindful of making better grades in school. And so that was good. I think that was right. But we should have had him paying for his insurance, the registration, and why in the world were we paying for the parts in his car? That would have given him something to be working and earning, and give him motivation to better himself and obey.
We botched it, Hannah.
Yeah, we botched it. Anyway, so hopefully people listening to this won't botch it, or at least they'll have food for thought. I'm sure there are more situations can happen with cars. The only other thing I liked how you said, if you put the costs on them, like, okay, you want to drive, you want to get a car, you want to be able to drive places on your own, you got to get your own car, and you got to look at all these expenses that go along with it. I like your point of, by the time they work and earn that, they're graduated from college or halfway through college, and they have jobs and they have responsibilities and they're ready for it. And by giving, instead of treating it as a right for them, letting them earn it, that gives them the chance to mature into it.
Right.
So then if you jump the gun and just go, here's a car, they're not ready for it.
Right.
Oh, they're not ready. And it's like, that car is more dangerous in the hands of a 16, 17-year-old than a 44 Magnum.
Oh my goodness.
And we didn't even touch on that, where we say, they're not ready and it's a high level of responsibility, and we've kind of alluded to it, but you just hit the nail right on the head, where there are so many actual dangers of giving kids this. It could be potentially a death trap. Where
didn't your sister's friends all die in a car accident
with her in the car? My sister had some friends, and they ended up flipping the car, and my sister survived, but one or more of her friends actually passed away because of teenage kids. And it wasn't they were being crazy or driving or speeding or per se. It was just they're teenage girls, teenage kids who didn't understand the power of the vehicle they were using. What Dr. Jones just said, where it's more dangerous than a loaded 44 Magnum, because they're like, this is fun, and it's a lot. It's too much responsibility.
Well, I remember my cousin, his parent, he was an only child for a long time, and kind of his parents' pride and joy, and his parents bought him the coolest race car, brand new race car, when he was a teenager. And we went to visit him, and he was a fun cousin. He was really nice, and he's like, Hannah, you want to? I was like, wow, this is the nicest car, and I was so impressed by his car. He's like, do you want to go for a ride in it? And I'm like, yeah. And so I got in the car with my cousin, and it was a residential neighborhood with hills and everything like that, and he just floored it. I think we're going 100 miles an hour. I got so mad, and I said, stop the car, stop it. And the more I said stop it, the faster he went. I'm like, but in my mind, I was thinking, there's families living here, and a little kid could run out into the street, and there's no way you could stop. And I wasn't very old, but I knew like what little kids did, because I had little brothers and sisters. And so I was just like, you're not thinking about what that would mean if you hit a kid.
Yeah.
And ran over, like, or even,
life-changing consequences,
or somebody pulling their car out, and you can't see, but it was just,
and that would be an unfair burden to place on him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So just kind of food for thought, I guess.
But one last thing is anytime you give your kids possession of things, one of the hard things is like the same with media, where once it's theirs, it's like they feel like they don't have to obey other rules.
Right.
Like, oh, it's my car. I can go when I want to go. I don't have to tell you. I don't have to.
The rules don't apply anymore.
Yeah. And for some reason in the teenage brain, if they own the car, the rules don't apply anymore. And so it's good to put these natural delays on them getting a car. And the natural delay of saying, okay, sure you can get a car, but you got to pay for all these things. What are you going to do?
Even then, though, Hannah, I would be hesitant simply because I could see some kids, someone that sells them a car for cheap. Maybe they feel sorry for them. And then all of a sudden the kid does have a car and they don't have the responsibility, and it kind of upends the whole system and they haven't worked towards it. I would recommend mom and dad keep possession of all the transportation and let the kids use it based off of performance and make it a privilege and keep it as from being a right.
Well, one of the two. I don't think there's a perfect solution, like necessarily, but one of the two, because unfortunately, like one of our kids, we live in an area where there are very wealthy people. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, that's been a detriment. Yeah. It's been a blessing, but a detriment at the same time, because if my kids bat their eyes at any of these wealthy people and say,
like, oh, you can have my old Ford pickup. And you're like,
yeah,
no,
they can't. So,
oh, your parents want you to buy it. Okay. I'll sell it to you for $50. So you see the problem.
So that's a problem we have.
But if in fact, for whatever reason,
people
you
being
do
overly generous,
the kids do earn the car and buy it themselves, and you allow that, then you have, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to have to set up the ground rules of here. If any shenanigans happens, you're going to lose it. I think that's a bad proposition, because we went through that with social media. We've gone through that with cars already, and we've had bad luck with that, Hannah, where because any kid, if they break the rules and you try to take away something that they've earned, it damages the relationship.
Yeah. So, but if you do that, you have to have them help set up the rules ahead of time. Like
but
we were talking
Hannah,
about.
They
forget though. And oh gosh, they forget. But yeah, you have to have it in writing, email it to them, give them a copy of it, have it
notarized. I don't know.
Yeah, notarized.
I recommend not letting kids own the limiting access to the media in general, TV, movies, music, all that, as well as the mobility, where the cars, motorcycles, bikes, they have to ask you permission to go on a bike ride. They need to ask permission. And we had that, Hannah. We're like, okay, where are you going? Who's going to be there? How long are you going to be gone? And when are you coming back? And who's going with you? Those are the rules for any time the kids are mobile. And if for some reason, as soon as they get that vehicle of their own, they feel like the rules don't apply.
Yeah.
And so,
they sure do.
I've found it's more effective, especially when it comes to cars. All the vehicles in this house, if they're in my house, they belong to me, and you have to get permission to use them. And it's a privilege, not a right. And that solves all of those problems.
So this is a lot of food for thought.
Hopefully, yeah.
And those have been our different experiences. Dad, did you have any other experiences or
closing thoughts? Yeah,
thoughts that I see it a different way, or?
Well, I've expressed it before. As my thought is that if they know what it's going to cost up front, they're not going to be getting a car. Even if someone gives them a car, how are they going to get it insured? How are they going to register it?
Yeah,
they're just not going to do it. I just don't think they will.
Okay,
But I think it's a good idea to be in charge of it while they're residents of your home until they're 18 at least. I think that's.
And how
you guys have a lot of wisdom here. There's a lot of wisdom going on here.
Well,
and there you have it from the horse's mouth.
Wait, who's the horse here?
Dr. Jones. No, but yeah, seriously, Troy, thank you very much for being on and sharing your thoughts. I thank you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
You had a lot of good stories.
You guys be good.
Okay. All right. Good night. I love you.
lots. I love you. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
It's interesting going into this discussion. I thought for sure that allowing kids to have a car was a bad idea across the board. But I think Dr. Jones has really shown, I think he has a very valid point, and that is if the kid has shown they are responsible enough to earn the money to buy the car and to earn enough money to pay for insurance and earn enough money to pay for gas and earn enough money to pay for repairs, then there's no reason that they shouldn't have a car. But giving your kid a car is a bad idea across the board. And I think
because they haven't proved the responsibility.
Right. But if they go through all the steps of earning the money to buy the car, actually purchasing the car, going through the steps of, and paying for the registration, registering the car, buying insurance, keeping insurance, up to date, and maintaining the vehicle, then I get, to my surprise, that actually makes a lot of sense. And any kid that is able to do that actually is probably responsible enough to have a car, which is different. It's different than social media. My daughter earned enough money to buy her own phone and showed how responsible she was, but the social media was still too much of a burden for her.
Emotionally.
Yeah. Whereas a car, and that's the thing that's different about a car. We have, in our society, we have rules. Like, for instance, you can't get a license until you pass a test, like a standard threshold. And we don't have that for social media. It doesn't exist.
That's true. People are giving their 5 and 6 year olds,
phones and accounts and who knows
accounts
what.
And
so
yeah.
I think your dad had a very valid point, and it's changed my mind on this topic of. Granted, I still think if your son or daughter has earned the money for the car, bought the car, registered it, bought insurance, pays for gas and repairs, and they still break family rules, there still should be consequences for access to that vehicle. So
yeah,
that's
there should still be consequences
but it should
in
be,
place, but set them up ahead of time.
But typically a kid who's responsible enough to do all those things and have a car is going to be a responsible kid anyway.
Well, I was thinking about how we made the mistake with our son of saying, okay, this car is going to be yours if you do all this. But he wasn't in a position to pay for all the things.
Right.
And so it was like we still
didn't set it up
we still
right.
owned the car, but it was his car.
No, we made, here are the mistakes we made.
It caused a lot of conflict.
We didn't have him pay for the insurance. We didn't have him pay for the registration. And we offered to pay for any repairs. Those are all the mistakes. What should have happened was, yes, we should have set it up. Yes, if you earn your ego by this time, we will sell you this car, and maybe it's only $100 or $500, but we'll sell you this car, but you have to register it, you have to get your insurance, you have to pay for gas, and you have to make any repairs on your own. And that would have changed the entire scenario, and it still would have been a great gift, an amazing opportunity for him to earn his eagle.
Well, the one thing I felt like we did right was saying, hey, we'll supplement your gas money by your grades at school.
Right, sure.
I thought we did that right.
Well,
I was happy with that part.
But the app has that provision as well, where you have gasoline for the teen's car as part of your budget, which is money they can earn from doing their daily and weekly jobs and developing their habits. That could have been just integrated into the app just as easily.
Yeah.
So,
but even so, it was kind of for him that was like
it was helpful.
That was helpful to him, and he was really mindful of his grades, following through, which is something that he wasn't really that into.
Well, and it was
as
money.
Much.
It was money that we were going to be spending anyway, because we were going to be paying for the gas for him to go places anyway. So why not let him earn it through good grades and again leverage what we have.
Yeah.
So. Having said all that, I want to wrap up this whole series where we've talked about some pretty heavy things. We talked about the 3M privileges. And I went in with one mindset that these things should be greatly limited and stay in control of the parents. And I still hold true to that when it comes to money and when it comes to media.
Media especially.
Absolutely media. But when it comes to mobility and vehicles and bikes and cars and things, it is okay for the kids to own those things if they're the ones that bought them, they're the ones that are maintaining them, and they're the ones that are taking care of them. And I think that's kind of a shift in my mentality. But at the same time, I do want to also say that these 3 M's could also be easily relabeled as the 3 mistakes not to make. Take it from us who have made these mistakes. You don't have to make these mistakes again, where we made the mistake of giving our kids unfettered access to money, and that ended badly. We gave our kids made the mistake of letting our kids have unrestricted access to media, and that ended badly across the board, no matter who it was. And we also made the mistake of giving one of our kids a car. And those 3 things have really kind of colored how we approach.
Well, we made the mistake of letting him earn a car, but not giving him the full responsibility of the car.
Right.
And it caused all sorts of little problems and conflicts. The point is, as you approach these topics, like with your teens,
keep the Moneypants principles in mind, I guess, is really if we had kept the basic Moneypants principles in mind, we would have never would have given my son a car, and we definitely would have had him pay for everything. We would have had him pay his own insurance and his own gas. And
well, we didn't give it to him. He had to earn it.
Right, but we would have given him the opportunity to earn the insurance money and the gas money.
Yes,
and all those things
we missed that opportunity, and it actually caused a lot of conflict in our relationship.
Right.
Because it's upsetting. Well, you just ruined your car and I have to buy the pieces for it.
Yeah, the motivation was different. It was mixed motivations there.
Yeah, and so whereas if it was completely his car, I could go, man, that's going to cost you a lot of money. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
That really stinks,
Sorry, you got that speeding ticket. I don't know how you're going to pay for that.
Yeah,
it's going to be tough.
Yeah, you made a mistake jump starting your car.
And you fried the battery and parts of the engine. Boy, that was expensive.
God, I'm so sorry that happened. But instead, it was.
Why'd you do this? Now I have to pay for it. Yeah, you're right, Hannah. It damaged the relationship, and we could have avoided that.
Yeah. Anyway, so a lot of wisdom from
Dr. Jones.
Dr. Dad.
and that's all we have, and that's all the time we have for today. Just a lot, just hopefully food for thought. And if you like what you hear, please be sure to tell your friends. We may share something that, this is something that they may be looking for, some information that they've been looking for. Let them know about the Moneypants podcast. And if you have a suggestion for a future podcast, please go to our website under support, contact us, send us an email, and we'll jump right on it. We're usually pretty good about responding to emails, and especially when there are excellent topics like this one, where this is a culmination of a lot of people's questions that we've been getting. And that's it for today. Enjoy a Falcon Jasper uniquely uber undulation. We'll see you next time.